Hello and good afternoon and welcome to Weston Nurseries in Chelmsford. I'm here on a beautiful sunny spring afternoon at last, hooray! And I'm going to talk to you about berries. Now, most people assume, particularly where blueberries are concerned, you need a yard, you need some space. And true, some of those bushes do get quite tall, taller than me even. But we do stock here a range under the name of Bushel Berry, and they are designed to be compact and primarily grown in containers. So if you've only got a small space, a balcony, a small outside patio, these are plants that will happily grow for you. They stay compact. Some of the blueberries only get to about 2 feet tall and wide. Some of the varieties, we've probably got about 4 or 5 of them here, get a little bit taller, but generally they stay neat, tidy, so they look good, but most importantly, they actually produce a ton of berries. So we have several types of blueberry here. I will just point out one variety in particular because it is marketed by them not only to produce blueberries, but to be something of a boxwood substitute. And I'm sure that those of you who are keen gardeners have probably heard that there can be problems with boxwoods. These years, there seems to be plenty of pests and diseases that plague them, and some people are finding they just can't successfully grow them. And the variety that Bushel Berry has developed to be something of a boxwood substitute is called BerryBux. So when it leaves out, the foliage does look quite like boxwood. The obvious difference between boxwood and this is that in our climate, it is deciduous. It will lose its leaves in winter. But that being said, all of them will turn a beautiful fiery tones of red and orange and that, the typical blueberry foliage. So, and because they're compact, only about 2 feet tall, sometimes up to about 3 feet, depending on the variety, you're going to have a really neat front of the border edging, you know, for a walkway, things like that. So to give you an idea of how easy they are to grow in containers, we've actually got one potted up here. This is the Blueberry Jellybean, and the nice thing about this one, it doesn't grow more than 2 feet tall and wide. It has really colorful foliage. It's just starting to actually pop its leaves at the base of the plant. So you get all these vibrant mixed colors, and then they fade to the regular green. And then come the fall, it will do the same thing as the foliage changes color before falling. In order to plant them in containers, you need a container that's about 16 inches wide, 14 inches is the minimum, but 16, 18 inches will work. A similar height so that there is room for the plant to actually grow. And then for blueberries, you will do advisably a mix of half potting soil. This is the Bar Harbor blend potting soil. And also the Penobscot blend planting mix, because this one is geared towards more acid soil loving plants, which blueberries are. They're native to New England, so they are used to soil that is quite acidic. So mix that in, and then we always recommend when planting new plantings to use some of the Biotone starter fertilizer. It comes on the back with precise instructions on how much you use for what size plant you're doing. And in this case, they are 3-gallon plants, or that one was, 1.5 cups. So mix that in with the planting soil as you go, and then obviously water once you've done that. I will draw your attention to a few special features about growing plants in containers as opposed to in the soil. You are going to have to monitor the watering. They are going to dry out quicker than anything in the ground. If you think about it, the root system, while it is in a pot, it is actually exposed to temperature extremes more than anything in the ground. So in the summer, this is going to heat up and dry out quicker, and it would not be unusual that you might have to water these once a day. You know, just check. You can stick your fingers in the soil. If it's feeling dry down to your first knuckle, then it's probably time to give them a drink. Similarly, in the winter, please be aware that they also feel the cold more than any plant in the ground. And if we're going to have really bitter freezing temperatures like we did a couple of times through this past winter, it might be worth either putting them in a garage, an unheated basement, even sinking them if it's a pot that isn't going to be ruined by that, but sinking them in your compost heap, in a pile of leaves. Failing that, you know, wrap some bubble wrap around them, depending on your circumstances. Just keep an eye so that the roots don't really freeze and kill the plant. And then that's pretty much it. You know, the plants themselves are self-pollinating, although it's always better if you've got room for two of the same things. It improves the yield of fruit, but it doesn't mean that you don't get fruit just because you've only got one. As you can see, there are lots of little flowers about to come out on this, and blueberries and fruit plants in general are great for pollinators. You know, bumblebees love them. And one last little tip to keep them going long term, I said we'll start with the starter fertilizer, the biotone here, when we plant, but in future years, we also have a specific fertilizer, berrytone, to help improve the yield of our crops over time. Growing in a container, they are going to want a little bit of extra food as time goes on. So the starter fertilizer will keep them going all the way through this first year, and then each spring, give them a little bit of berrytone to help them along. But Bushel and Berry also produce a couple of other container-grown plants for which they're not so demanding of acidic soil. So you can plant, again, you're going to use a similar size container for them. You can just do it in a good quality potting soil. And they have a raspberry called raspberry shortcake. It makes about a 2 foot high and wide bush that will produce sort of prolifically through the summer months. And the same goes for a blackberry here, baby cakes. Both of them are thornless, so for those of you with small children or whatever, they're ideal. Nobody's going to get scratched or anything like that. Their care is pretty similar to the blueberry. When it comes to the spring, they've started growing and leafing out like these are. You'll be able to see if there's any old canes, stems that just need cutting back to the base where the new growth is coming. That's perfectly normal for raspberries. That's what they do, the same with the blackberry as well. So I hope you have seen something that piques your interest. You know, fruit growing is not just for somebody with a decent sized yard. Anybody can find a little bit of space for a pot like this. And don't forget, just because I'm saying they're for pots, they're also for ornamental borders, raised beds, the vegetable garden if you wish, you know, entirely up to you. But these are really versatile and you'll be able to have loads of tasty fruit come the summer. So come along and see us. This is Catherine, signing off from Weston Nurseries, Chelmsford. If you liked what you saw, subscribe to our channel. But we've got 3 locations, Hopkinton, Chelmsford and Hingham, where you'll be able to pick up these plants.